How you guys doing? This has been probably uh, I feel like it's been a while since I talked to you guys. But I guess let's go into it. Some of my some of my readings have led me to some interesting thoughts that I haven't necessarily been thinking about too much, but I think it's best to talk them out and try to talk them out in a more clear fashion for myself. Um, so the philosophy of this, I was gonna call it the philosophy of nice guy, but um, I decided not to go with that. But anyways, I got this idea, the whole idea of nice, from when I was reading C.S. Lewis's book on Mere Christianity, and what he was trying to distinguish immediately was that just because you have he was making this comparison in Christianity where most people have a problem with Christianity because these people don't live up to the expectations of Christianity, living up to the morality of Christianity. But C.S. Lewis was going tackling this problem by looking at our predispositional nature when it comes to morality. And so one of his biggest things that he tackled was being nice. And he said that being nice is somewhat relative to your predisposition, meaning that for some people, it can be really difficult for them to actually be nice. So for them to do like one good thing, it would technically outweigh, let's say, somebody else that it isn't difficult for them to be nice, for example. Um, so the people that are nice, they don't necessarily struggle with uh, what the other person struggles with, and this is what C.S. Lewis is trying to point out. And the argument that he's trying to make is that, does Christianity technically make you a better person? And what C.S. Lewis is trying to make clear to us is that the whole idea of becoming a better person is more relative to yourself than like an objective making better. Basically, if a convict were to become Christian, I believe C.S. Lewis would agree with me here on this. Basically, if a convict were to become Christian, in C.S. Lewis's mind, he would say, does um, does the convict become better to himself by accepting Christianity? Essentially, does the convict try to do more good things in the world around him by accepting Christianity? And that's really what he's trying to make out of the whole thing. So, but so now going back to the person it's easier for them to be nice. C.S. Lewis points out that just because it's easier for you to be nice, it would be a mistake to think that you are a better person than, let's say, the convict in my example. Um, and C.S. Lewis argues this from the point of, like, let's say you being nice most likely has to do with your predisposition and the environmental factors that you grew up in. And this actually made me think about the whole phenomena of, the incel phenomena, right? It's like the nice guy. It's basically like the incel is basically nice guy gone toxic um, phenomena, where where the nice guy believes that he deserves a certain type of women, or women in general, because he's a better man than the other type of men that aren't nice. So, and what's interesting about this phenomena of the incel is that, well, you can see how actually being nice has no foundation, to has basically nothing contingent to fall on. Like, being nice is not a self-sustaining attribute by itself. It cannot be sustained and had by itself. And what does that mean? It means that, and C.S. Lewis addresses this in Mere Christianity, it means that being nice, if you acknowledge a a higher being, right? Like, if you acknowledge an existence of God, then you would understand that your niceness is more of a gift, a blessing of that you have. And so your ease, your 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 ease in being able to be nice, in contrast to, let's say, like the convict, um, actually requires more of you. You are in a position, I think, I mean, I would say this, that actually the whole idea of being nice, right? It does put you in a better position of, you know, at least on the maybe moral hierarchy, it puts you in a better position, but it only puts you in a better position once you realize that your niceness is not a result of your own strivings. Your niceness is a result of a fundamental gift or blessing from from God Himself. And once you acknowledge that, then you use that niceness, your blessing, your gift, to serve humanity. But there is this dual action going on, and this is what Aldous Huxley tries to point out in the perennial philosophy, is that fundamentally your sole responsibility as a human being is to save your soul, save and purify your soul. Um, but the paradox is that just the attempt of saving and purifying your soul is also an act towards humanity. So you are also doing something. This spiritual act is also an act towards humanity. Um, but I think it's really important to, acknowledge that, when we have these discussions of, you know, of being nice and so on, is that actually, without any, the attribute of being nice without any theological background, in my opinion, or theological foundation, actually has no value. It has no value beyond its moral claims, essentially. But the thing is that if you don't have, if you have niceness only with moral claims, then you fall into the paradox where you are fundamentally no different than the man that is supposedly less nice than you. Um, and the reason why that happens is basically what our culture has identified as the incel, right? The phenomena of the incel today. So you can see that without any, at least in my opinion, I mean, this is obviously room for disagreement, but this is of my opinion that to have this quality of niceness, it falls short on itself because it's not self-sustaining. And so we just leave the quality of niceness to its moral claims, then it falls into this egotistical, um, I don't know, maybe this egotistical baggage that is thrown everywhere in front of everyone, and it doesn't. And then the irony is that it technically doesn't make you a better man than the one that does bad things for his own selfish gains. Um, so it just becomes your niceness just becomes self-serving, as if you deserve things because you are of some higher moral plane or something like that. So we can see that this is a problem unless the quality of nice is rooted in some divine principle. And you know, and actually, I would say that's the whole problem that we face when we don't have, when we have spirituality without religion and then religion without kind of spirituality. They both fall into these weird paradoxes without each other. Um, and this is why, the more I read the perennial philosophy, is that dogma itself is not necessarily bad. We like to throw around the word dogma, as if it was really bad. But I mean, if we understand that dogma itself is not an end but a means, if we understand these as a means, and I think it's very important that we understand that everything we do is a means. Um, this is something that the perennial philosophy advocates for. This is something C.S. Lewis basically points out, that niceness by itself is obviously not enough. It can only be niceness as a means, right? Your quality of being nice is not something, and this is why I think it's very useful to talk about in terms of like I know I'm calling this like a men's series, but I felt like I felt like this title was adequate still, being called a men's series, because um, a lot of men do have qualms with the idea of being nice and why that fails. But fundamentally, nice fails because it is clearly understood that nice by itself is not self-sustaining. It's actually not worth it. It's actually not worth being nice. And for many good reasons, it's not worth being nice. But they are only correct in the sense without any theological, you know, root. Essentially, you know, that's what's interesting about the culture of men, is that what the culture of men say, um, some of it is true in the sense that it's like, yes, it's true if we accept that there is no divine root. So when the cultural understanding goes into that being nice is not fundamentally something worth pursuing, being a man and so on, because you don't get anything out of it, right? Um, or let's say you get more abused or you get used, and this is also has to do with the problem of pride as well. But the thing is, even being nice becomes like a sort of pride soaking quality without any divine principle to kind of help you. And again, this is also the problem with just general spirituality, where you're trying to climb the spiritual mountain, and literally, if you don't understand that everything you do is not because of your own strivings, then you're going to fall into spiritual arrogance. And I would say that niceness, the quality of nice, is a very good beginning to point out that the failings of climbing the spiritual mountain, essentially, because even people reduce religion to its mere only ethical and moral component, um, which, if you do reduce religion to its mere moral and ethical component, then you are missing a lot of the essential intellectual elements of religion if you simply reduce it to its moral and ethical. Actually, if you reduce religion to its moral and ethical points, then there's actually no point in following religion. You can just have a humanist outlook without mystery, essentially, and that's it. There's actually no point. Um, but yeah, I think I think that's all I really wanted to talk about. I mean, um, I know I called this a men's series, but I thought, yeah, it would be good to talk about the quality of niceness, and how that the attribute itself is not self-sustaining, and that fundamentally, without a divine principle, the quality of nice, being nice, its utility, if we take a utilitarian kind of understanding of niceness, it's pointless, it's useless. Um, but if you do place it in a divine principle, then being nice is actually something that has utility. It actually can serve for your, one, serve your soul, and then serve humanity at the same time. Um, Without the divine principle, you have nothing to, you fall into a couple of traps. One, you can fall into the egotistical trap of being nice, meaning that you use nice as an end for itself, or you somehow believe that everything you do out of your niceness, every work that you do out of it, you deserve something. And this is the phenomena of the incel, um, but it's mainly attributed to, you know, the man thinking that he deserves these women and so on. But it doesn't necessarily have to apply to women. It can apply to anything that we do. Um, Basically, it's demanding the fruits of your labor as if your own striving deserved it, right? As if you did everything out of your own striving. And I think this is the importance of C.S. Lewis, and understanding the divine principle, that your own striving isn't necessarily your own striving. And the perennial philosophy by Aldous Huxley understands this as well, that there is this degree of just uh, like grace, but there is so much involved with climbing this spiritual mountain that you'd have to understand fully, and it would actually take a long time to really understand this, at least experientially, that a lot of what you perceive as your own striving is really more like a grace itself from the divine principle. Um, and I think it's really important that as men, I think it's really important that we understand that. Um, and would have to go into cultivating um, holy indifference, which is something that I want to practice more, because the cultivating holy indifference is really like the, I mean, Aldous Huxley goes more into this, but it's basically the idea of like having this one pointedness. It's very Buddhist and Hindu, but the one pointedness that Hinduism and Buddhism talks about is essentially what in Christianity or in the Abrahamic religions would be called holy indifference. Um, but yeah, I feel like that's something that I can talk about later as I gather more thoughts about this, about what it means to have this holy indifference and why it's important to have holy indifference. Because without holy indifference, you fall into many spiritual paradoxical traps that fundamentally doesn't make you any better than the other person that is not doing anything spiritual, so to say. So you fall into these traps, um, and that's why I decided to tackle the quality of niceness, because it it is such a good elementary and beginner type of spiritual trap that so many so many men fall into and so many men avoid. Um, because one, they acknowledge that uh, being nice doesn't get you anything, not necessarily, especially if you're trying to strive for the fruits of your labor. It doesn't really get you anything, so to speak. So, in that sense, they are correct, but they're only correct in the sense, if they believe that niceness itself is sort of self-sustaining for the fruits of their labor. That is only true in that sense. But it is not true if you are attempting to be nice and understanding that your attempt at being nice is only really a gift and blessing in itself, and that it is more like the attempt on your soul and towards humanity, and that your own striving isn't necessarily your own striving. You only get allowed as far because, you only get as far because you are allowed to get as far. Um, which, if you do get as far, right, which we have to keep in mind and account for the fact of people's temperaments and physical constitutions, that once you start taking this into effect, you realize that, let's say, maybe it is easier for you to be nice. If you do realize that, you'd understand that actually you bear a greater responsibility towards humanity than the other man that strives to do one good deed. Um, which it's very important that we acknowledge this fact, is that if it is easier for you to be nice, it does put you in a superior position or a higher position, but it's not superior in the sense that you're thinking of. It's superior in the sense of that it demands you have more responsibility towards humanity, um, than the other guy. Um, it's not that you deserve more than the other guy. Is that you're already placed in a position where you are meant to serve a broader base than the guy that struggles, just to do like one good thing. So when you understand that, you become, basically like a servant leader. Um, then the quality of being nice is actually a fundamental attribute to being this. um, servant leader as a man. So, but of course, I'm only talking about nice by itself. I haven't talked about the attributes kind of interacting with each other. Um, you know, so, but yeah, that's a whole topic for another time. When attributes, like, I'm pretty sure there's questions of like, would you necessarily want to be nice all the time? Um, for me, that's a clear no. There are moments, clearly where you have to be stern and stuff, and that's the whole point about like balancing attributes is that you never depend on one attribute for every circumstance. You just have to sort of weigh your attributes and figure out which attribute is worth cultivating in that moment and in that decision. But um, yeah, but this one was just about being nice. And yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys take care. All right, bye.